Hi, how are you?
Hello, good. How are you?
Doing well, doing well.
Awesome. I think we're just waiting on one more. There we go. Okay, so I quickly want to introduce who I am first. I'm Ashley. I'm a motivational speaker and a coach, equipping women with the skills necessary to be fierce in their lives. And I think that using fierce women as my platform to host conversations like this is necessary right now. I am a high school English teacher in North Carolina and a wife to a loving husband. There's three things I want to go over before we start our conversation. So the first thing is that I want everyone to be aware that this is a recorded conversation and it will be shared on my social media platforms. We have about 40 minutes to discuss because of the Zoom requirement right now. Secondly, you are not required to say who you are working for right now. So I don't expect you to name your employer. And thirdly, if you look over in the Zoom group chat, I've laid out some guidelines and some ground rules. Just because we all are strangers coming into this conversation, I wanted to kind of set the tone really for what's expected of us. So if you read over those quickly, we're going to be using the raise your hand function if you need to say something while somebody's speaking, but we're going to try not to interrupt each other. Be respectful of everybody's opinion. Do not use offensive language or hate speech. And agree that we might not all agree on the things that we believe in. So if you could type I agree in that chat, just so I can see that you have agreed to that. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so I want to thank you all for joining this conversation. I know that it's been a really challenging last 2 weeks, and I know that these conversations can be difficult. So thank you. Some of you I know personally. Others of you I reached out to on Instagram or Facebook. So I really appreciate you coming and adding to the narrative, building the bridges between this racial divide that I've been seeing. And I want the audience to know too, when I show this, that this is a unique conversation in the fact that we all are strangers coming together to talk about such a difficult topic to talk about. So thank you all for being here. To you all, thank you. I think that this group can really inspire change, and that's what I'm hoping for right now. I know over the last 2 weeks, my eyes have been opened, particularly with my husband, who's African American, what he's had to face and what he's daily compartmentalizing when he's going to work, when he's going home, when he's jogging, when he's driving, and it's just been a real eye opener, and I want change. And so I first now want to open it up for you guys to introduce yourselves, maybe who you are, where you're from, and just kind of what you're feeling right now. I guess we can start with Sam.
Hello, I'm Samantha Payne. So I am originally from Paducah, Kentucky, and right now I live in Maryland. And right now I feel very overwhelmed. And a part of me feels grateful that other people are part of the conversation that maybe I was just having with my close friends or other Black people. We would talk about these kind of topics all the time, but it's good now to have allies.
Hi, I'm Katie Huguenin. I'm originally from the Midwest, but I also live in Maryland. Sam's a good friend of mine. I think I'm feeling similarly, right? There's a lot of information out there. There's lots of emotions and feelings surrounding this, but I'm glad it's starting a lot of conversations that we haven't had in the past. And I think this is a really good opportunity.
I guess I can go next. My name is Kierston. I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina. Sorry, I'm moving too much. I'm trying to get settled. I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina. Ashley, thanks for inviting me to this conversation. I'm feeling a little upset that we have to go through this right now, just because, I'm glad there's a lot of light being shown on this, and I'm glad you brought people together to talk about this. I'm a little bit, I'm a lot angry, but it's just heartbreaking more than anything that we have to continue to go through this, and we have to go through to these extreme measures to, get people to understand where we're coming from. So
I'll go. I'm Ryan Jessen. I'm originally from Utah, but made my way by way of DC, Alabama, New Orleans, and now I live in Southern California. So I was an actual middle school teacher for around 7 years in each of those places, and now in the private sector in sales and the entrepreneurship world. I am angry that it takes the visual representation of a death for a nation to finally say, let's sit down and talk. It just shows the actual absolute gross nature of where we are and how absolutely broken we are as a country. And I'm really sad that it takes that and a direct video of a human life for us to have to sit down like this. So
I'm gonna jump in. I'm Barry White Jr. Hey everyone. I'm an educator here in Charlotte, North Carolina, actually. So I know somebody said they moved to Charlotte. I got a mix of emotions. If I had to describe, kind of the question said, how are you feeling about particularly having to have this meeting? Of a word to describe that would be past due, all right? Because I'm gonna take it a step further with what my guy was saying here is, as even a Black man, like I'm trying to figure out why do I have so much tension in my body? Why is there so much rage? Why this time did I feel how I feel, over the last 2 weeks, right? Waking up and raging. And then I thought about is, okay, not even just the visual repetition of a Black man dying, because we have that. Like I've had that for years, name after name. It doesn't end, right? So it's like, okay, what is it about now? So when you talk about what it took for America to look at this, well, it took COVID-19 and the whole country being shut down, right? It took riots, people like looting, whatever you want to call it. Every single thing played this part. For me, that's how I personally feel. Everything played this part to get to a point where America goes, wait a minute. It actually is a bad thing that, Black men and women are getting killed every day of the street. What I'm not going to allow myself to subscribe to, and people who I talk to in the genuine conversations, is subscribe to that and be a prisoner of the moment. Like all of a sudden now, yeah, this is a problem. Yeah, let's jump on the board. This is it right now. This been happening, right? So this is like, I'm not even going to allow that to take away from the moment that this isn't just about a single person. This is about continuation of people who have to literally, like you said, with your husband, have to go to work, have to drive every single day, sit in these meetings, sit in all these phones, and I have to have some type of sense of normalcy, right? So it's like when I think about why I'm feeling how I'm feeling now, and why I haven't had to feel like that before, is because I'm not having to go to these meetings. I'm not having to be at school, look in front of children and continue to teach them curriculum and academics. Where actually I'm looking and going, yo, this is not right, because America will have you feel like it's become normalized to where somebody died, you protest, let me go to work the next day. Let me go sit on and have fun. So it's a range of emotions for me. I know I kind of dig into a little bit of other questions, but that's how I'm feeling right now.
Quick question. Did y'all hear me say anything? Because I feel like my phone was on mute when I was trying to talk.
We heard you in the beginning. I don't know if it cut off at the end, but I think we got most of it.
Did. Okay.
I'm Alysse. I actually worked with Ashley maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And then I also worked with Barry just this past year and year before as well. I'm a teacher and I've been in the game for coming on my 9th year. You know, I'm in the sense I'm similar to everyone else. Like I'm feeling a lot of things. I don't think I could sum it up in a sentence. I don't think I could sum it up in a dissertation. But I think that I'm feeling called to have these intentional conversations, even more so than I already was previously to this incident. So that's where I'm kind of at with things right now.
Thank you. Thank you guys, and nice to meet everybody virtually, finally. So I think that everybody's feelings right now are valid. Like we all have different ranges. We all live through different experiences, and we've all seen things that I think, Barry, you're right. Like it took seeing it for white America to actually take notice, and that's what, I mean, it's a problem. And one of the prompts that I sent you guys to talk about was how your feelings have evolved over the last 2 weeks. And I'll kind of go ahead and start. You've touched a lot on how you're feeling right now. But for me, like I started with being angry a lot, and then sadness, and then I had to acknowledge my white privilege in this situation, which is, it just has to be done. And I protest for the first time for civil rights with my husband last weekend, and it was emotional. And they say, you know, say her name, say his name, and the first time you have to say that out loud, it's very emotional, and it's very like, this is not right. Like they should still be alive. And this is, it felt good at the same time, knowing that there was so much unity within the city, trying to create change. And for me at this time, I'm thinking everybody's done their posts, everybody's done their sharing of all of their friends' posts, right? But now I'm seeing like a lot of white people and family members and friends retreat from posting and sharing and getting involved in it. Like they are feeling overwhelmed. And something my husband said before, like, you can't run away from being Black. Like I wake up Black every day. And so for white people to kind of try and ignore what's going on right now is like infuriating. So that's where I'm at right now. So can anyone kind of tell me how your feelings have evolved over the last 2 weeks?
I can start. So for me, I feel like it's gotten closer to me because I haven't necessarily experienced where I felt threatened by other people or felt like, you know, I was treated a little bit differently. But, you know, just now with all the protesting and like the situations that are taking place, I feel like it's starting to affect me a lot more. Even like walking through my neighborhood, I feel like, you know, there's a lot of eyes on me just because I'm Black. Walking the other night with my friend, somebody came outside and felt they needed to stand out there just to watch us walk. And it just hurts my feelings to experience that. And I just hate so badly that, you know, we have to experience like numerous deaths to even understand what people are feeling like, for, you know, for people to like step into our shoes now. And like you, Ashley, I felt all those emotions when I walked through my first protest because, you know, I've never had the opportunity to do that. And so when a friend told me like, hey, like we're going out to protest, just those emotions of like, you know, experience, and like we took a knee for maybe like 8 minutes just to think and or you can't really feel what someone feels when they're dying or going through that, but just to even like experience that made me like want to cry, just because that could have been my brother, that could have been my father. So just over time, like seeing it more and more makes me more frustrated, more angry, because it's not that this is just starting, but it's continuing and it's becoming even more of a problem. So right now I'm just like more hurt and confused, and it's just depressing to even hop online and see even more stuff is continuing to happen. Like, what do we have to do for this really to change? and people don't even understand that we need this to change. They're so confused while we're saying like Black Lives Matter. It's like always like a retreat back to for someone to say like all lives matter, but that's not, we're not saying that everybody's life doesn't matter, but that's automatically what people say when they don't feel the same. So it's just very frustrating at this point.
I'll have to agree with her, for sure. I know, so Katie and I work together, and so I don't watch the news ever, because I feel all the feelings. Like I'm very empathic, so I just can't. And so she basically let me know, she was like, girl, you need to know what's happening on, I think it was like last Monday. And so she kind of told me what all was going on. I knew about the death of George Floyd, but I didn't know that there was such an uprising. And so she told me, and whenever we had a conversation at work about it, I basically like kind of went off, not even kind of went off, like Mary was saying. I was like, I think it's cool that y'all want to talk about this now, but I've been dealing with this every day, and we can like check a box and say, okay, we talked about racial discrimination, we talked about it, cool. I mean, this is just the new hotness. This is what y'all want to talk about right now. But a month from now, 2 years from now, 10 years from now, I'm still gonna wake up Black, and I'm still gonna be dealing with this. So if y'all just want to have conversations and not make changes, keep me out of the conversation. And I know that some people took it the wrong way, but it's because I am so angry, because there are so many emotions attached to this for me, because not only just from white people, even just the fact that from Black people too, like racial is like, the racial problem is so big. Like for Black people to look at me and say, oh, you Oreo, oh, you think you white, oh, you think you better, oh, you bougie, all these, like making me feel bad because I come off maybe as a white girl or whatever. So race stuff is huge. Like it's a big thing and it cuts deep. And so I think like now I just know I have to give grace, because when we have these conversations, a white person may start crying because they just realize like, oh, I didn't know that I was doing this. And I'm just looking at them like, okay, or they may say I'm uncomfortable. Well, guess what? I'm uncomfortable every day. So be uncomfortable. Like we need to have these conversations. So I think a lot of rage, a lot of anger, a lot of hurt has been coming over me, but now it's like, okay, I want to be part of the solution. So that's kind of where I am in my workplace, and how can I be part of the change?
I can go. So similar to you, Sam, I'm thankful in a sense to have these conversations, like you said, that are not checking boxes, like this impromptu, like, you know, when we have doing with First Woman, because more so, if I learned nothing else, is becoming comfortable with being uncomfortable. And sometimes that means we've had to live with that, right? So be transparent. I've had to live consistently with being comfortable, being uncomfortable in all these different situations and industries, whatever you want to talk about. I have to get used to that. So now it's time for other races to get used to being comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? So initially, how my feelings evolved over time, like most of my other people here, it was a lot of rage. It was a lot of tension. It was a lot of, like, my body was tight. I'm going to sleep feeling this way. I'm waking up feeling this way. And I still got to function in a professional environment. I still got to put my suit and tie on, come and talk. So a lot of that was weighing on me. And I just think, and I was talking to a buddy of mine, what type of mental trauma is being hit? Like, are we getting hit with right now? Because I'm a grown man. I have coping skills. I have ways to deal with it, right? I've developed that. What about the 9-year-old, 8-year-old boys and girls that don't have these skills? They have not learned this. Nobody's telling them this, right? It's at 29, I'm still figuring out how to deal with it. So what about the people that can't speak how I speak, can't come on these calls, right? So it's a lot of different, for me, it just continues to, go up, plateau, go up some more, just continue to, go up and down, because I channel that energy and convert it into action though, right? So now we're out there with the protests. I'm out there reading, sharing, using my platform that I have to bring light to certain things, to share these articles. Hey, I'm speaking at conferences. Oh, listen, let's talk about these real conversations. How do we impact, how this is trickling into education? Because race as an umbrella under America is already bad. Think about how now this is trickling into our educational system. So I'm just converting that energy that I have in this, instead of just sitting here, being upset and angry, I'm channeling into something that's actionable. But something else you touched on too, that I'm looking at, thinking about is how you said, as of right now, we fought to 19 days in, all of a sudden the Black Lives Matter posts starting to fade away. Like it's not trending anymore, right? So I feel like a lot of that, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm gonna take what I can get from these companies and all these people that showing the Nickelodeons, even Starbucks is now they face backlash, so now they trying to allow Black people to wear the Black Lives Matter, right? When they got some pushback there, oh yeah, you might be going out of business, right? So now they get all this, but I'm gonna take what I can get when it comes to support, and I'm happy to see that there are big corporations that are in power, because we need allies. At the end of the day, we're gonna need people who are in power to understand what's happening and then inflict change. But it's also like, I'm not naive. A lot of this is out of obligation, because it's like, one corporation starts, one business starts. If you sitting there quiet, you done lost us, right? And then, it's statistics. We spend the most money. Trained out Black people spending the most money here. So it's like, you lost. So it's like out of obligation, you were having to do this. But because it's an obligation, people can feel like, oh, I did my part. I went silent 8 minutes this day. All right, guys, let's put that on calendar. Let's make sure that's in the archives. We're going to show people we did that. No. What, for the rest of the time that we on this earth, how is it going to continuously impact, and what change are you really going to make? You can post that square, but then is your staff diverse? Are you actually hiring people now? Are you bringing in people to keep, culturally earshot to where they can check you on, listen, that's tone deaf. Like, that's not correct. So it just comes back for me to, like you said, this isn't a trend. Like, this isn't a trend for me. And then even, I'm going to take what you said, Sam, like, it's not just, white people or the racists, even my own kinfolk. Like, it's some people I talk to goes, no, I'm tired. I'm just over it. What are you over? What exactly are you tired of? Are you tired of advocating for Black men and women to be alive and treated as a human? Because they're not tired of killing us. They haven't been tired for 400 years. So what exactly are we tired of after 2 or 3 weeks? So it's just, about continuing to keep this conversation going, and then more importantly, continuing to put pressure on these, these companies, corporations, all the people in power that control the media to continue. Do not let this die out. Do not let it fade out. Because if it does, guess what? 2 months, we went back to square one. And there's going to be another protest. There's going to be another conversation on a Zoom call, right? So that's, for me, that's how I've evolved in my feelings.
I guess I'll go ahead and go. I think I started out, my initial concern was for my kids at school. So like being with COVID and being out of school, 99% of my students are Black. And a lot of them consistently would say to me, Miss Pearson, you're the only white person I ever met that like loves me, that I have a relationship with, right? So like I would have, that was like on the forefront of like, I was like, I can't hug my kids today. Like I can't love them. I can't show them that not all white people have this narrative of Black people in their mind that are dangerous. Not all white people are afraid of Black people, right? And so that was like my very first emotion, was like that mom instinct of like, I just want to love my kids. And then embarrassing, maybe this is a little bit embarrassing of a thought, I kind of went into like a little bit of arrogance towards white people because a lot of my development and a lot of my life, most of my friends have been people of color. A lot of the places I have felt most accepted is with Black people and in Black culture. It's always been something that I've embraced since I was a little kid. And so I think I just kind of had this air of arrogance towards other white people and anger, like, you're so dumb. Like I've been having this conversation for years, right? Like this isn't something that just opened my eyes as a white person. Like you can ask Barry, he and I have had like extensive conversations about race. And like, I felt like, come on guys, catch up, like get with the picture. And then that kind of led me into having conversations with other white people of just being like, man, like I need to, if I'm going to have the ear of other white people, I need to change the way that I'm speaking to them, because no one's going to listen to me if I come at them arrogantly. No one's going to listen to me if I come at them with this, like, I know better than you kind of vibe. So like, I think I went into personal reflection mode to be like, how can I make the biggest difference? And that's by engaging other people and doing it in a meaningful way, not just like having a conversation for the heck of it, like having that conversation with the intention of making a difference. And so that's kind of where I sat for like a good week of like just trying to figure out like, okay, what are my next steps? Where am I moving? How am I moving? And like being strategic about who I'm talking to and why I'm talking to them about certain things. Which then kind of like bleeds into me being a teacher and like, how am I going to incorporate that more in my classroom? I'm moving to a different school this year. So the makeup of my students is going to look different. It's not going to be 98% Black. It's going to be more Hispanic and more white and more Black. So it's going to be more diverse in culture. So then I need to reflect myself and figure out, how do I incorporate this into my science lessons daily? Because this is a daily conversation and my impact is the biggest in my classroom. That's who I have the most contact with. That's who I have the most connection with. And so it's trying to figure out, how am I doing this? I even Googled like, how do I incorporate teaching race into genetics, right? How do I incorporate like that into like literal science lessons so that it's something that's just like, duh, come on guys. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. I think, the emotions of anger and sadness and hopelessness kind of ebb and flow. But I think I'm just at this point really trying to channel it into like something tangible, something that's urgent in the biggest of ways. So that's just kind of where I'm at with it all right now.
Yeah, I think similar to, I mean, Sam and I have talked about this extensively, but, similarly, I started with anger and devastation and, it's 2020. Why is this still a thing that nobody wants to address and nobody wants to look at until it's on mainstream media, right? Our family, right? So I'm in a same-sex couple. We have children. Civil rights has always been a topic that our family is very passionate about. It's something we've talked about for years and years. So I think I was, I don't know if upset's the right word, but I had a lot of feelings about going to another protest, right? We've been going to protests, we go to marches. So there was kind of, I think maybe hopelessness is a good word with like, we're doing this again. Where is the change? Where is the meaningful action that goes beyond these conversations of explaining white privilege and intersectionality and talking about all of these things. So I think it took me probably about a week to sit down and kind of sort through those feelings and realize that, I need to capitalize on the fact that people are starting to ask questions. People are starting to say, I need you to explain to me. I had a really good conversation in a book club I'm in this morning about helping people understand, that you can be a good person and be a part of the problem. And how can we help them understand that even unintentionally you're doing things? So let's educate you on what you're doing. And so you can be smarter about it next time. And how we can get that spread of knowledge a little bit wider and hopefully keep the momentum to keep the conversations going, right? The more we can educate people that don't understand, the more they're going to educate other people once they start to understand what's going on, right? And we're talking about what we're seeing on the news is police brutality, right? But then once we start educating, once we start talking more, then we can start opening it up a little bit more to talk about other issues that are interconnected that maybe aren't on MSNBC right
now. I very similar to a lot of you. It started out with a lot of anger. My intersectionality in a lot of circles is pretty interesting. I'm engaged to a gorgeous Black queen, right, from Houston, whose parents are like pastors in Houston, right? So like that's a circle. I taught in New Orleans. I taught in rural Alabama, where like you want to talk about rural issues under the race umbrella. It's a whole different gamut. So right then I moved to East LA and I'm teaching, Latinx and Mexican Americans, and and I grew up in Utah, and I grew up as a white Mormon who left Mormonism. I mean, I just can't be a bigger like melting pot of just whatever inside of me. So, I take all of this and I say, what in the world do I do? I feel bad for leaving teaching when I was one of the like radical history teachers who just said, you know what, this isn't the curriculum. That white people didn't create this country. I'm not going to teach this stuff, right? We're going to teach the reality. We're going to teach economics. I'm going to teach kids how to build a business. I'm going to teach kids how to self-sustain. We're not going to do this sort of stuff. So I left that. Now I'm like, I'm in this business world. So I'm in a mixed, real situation of sort of how do each of these circles feel, because they all feel vastly different, right? My students in New Orleans and Alabama feel super different, obviously, than my white counterparts in Utah that I grew up around, right? It's all lives matter, and how dare you say something about a police officer, and I just want to like reach through a screen sometimes. But like, so it becomes a challenge to try to cross these groups and figure out how to communicate and what to do. And so I've evolved quite a bit, but the most fascinating thing that I landed on is there's nothing better than a home taught and a school taught environment for growth and change. And so conversations at home saying, how do you experience this? How does she experience this, or how does she feel this? And conversations with, our goddaughter who's 16, who's like, well, yeah, of course I get followed around in stores. Like, that's not racism. That's just my life. And I'm like, whoa, right? Like, so even at your age, it's just life. It's not actually systemic corporational racism, right? And so I think I've really gotten mad at influencers. I've got mad at celebrities. I've been vocal on actual pages. I think that's how we crossed, actually, honestly, was me being extremely vocal on a white female large motivational speaker celebrities page by saying, I don't want to see a picture of your happy family right now and your post about growing tomatoes. Like, are you kidding me right now? Like, you take black dollars, but you don't want to speak to black problems. So how about we like actually address something and stop taking money and actually address what's going on? And so I went to this real anger stage of like reaching out to these people that I've crossed with or possibly crossed with their circles. And so I don't know, I'm in an anger stage of trying to figure out where these circles intersect or where they lie or how to best sort of advocate while trying to maintain where I am, because despite being in all those circles, I'm still a white man in America. Despite having those experiences of being so connected to Black culture at very strong moments of my life and in my own home, I can't sit here and deny and be this colorblind individual to say, oh, I'm so connected. I am what I am, right? And so, understanding that and being able to realize where it connects and how to do and how to operate with it in the strongest way possible is kind of where I sit. But I would say more anger. I would say more anger for branding over humans. I'm angry about profits over people. I'm angry that your black square equals you can move on and sell a book the next day, right? I'm angry that you can do a motivational speech on race when you've never done one before. I mean, come on, right? Like all of a sudden now's your time to capitalize on black dollar. Like, get out of here. So that's kind of where I sit in the midst of anger and also trying to figure out how to work through these circles. So.
Thank you, all of you guys. Thank you. There's a couple things I wanted to touch on. Was that having an African American for my husband, I constantly get those questions like, oh, because you have a Black husband, can you vocalize? Can you answer on this? And can you speak on this? And I'm like, well, no, I can't because I'm white. So if you have a question, diversify your life, have those hard conversations yourself, and don't reach out to, I do think there's this common thing right now going on about white people need to teach themselves. It's not the responsibility for African American to teach us African American history, basically. And I do think that it is our job to just to solve the problem that white people created, right? But I also think that these conversations are so very important. And there's an activity that I sent out to the people that follow me. It was a diversity activity, and basically you put your name in a circle and then you had different colors that represented different things. And however many different colors you had, like if your doctor's white, your best friends are white, which kind of shows do you watch? Are they white? Are they Black? And you visually got to see how diverse your life is. And I got floods of emails about, wow, I didn't realize that my life is so not diverse. And I'm like, yeah, so maybe it starts in your home. So the last thing that I want to talk about, because I think we need to wrap it up soon, but is the ways that we can address this problem. And so one of the ways that I do believe, and I think that Ryan touched on a little bit, was that it starts in the family, it starts in your home, and it starts in the education system as well. So when parents are, I'm not a parent, so I don't know, but I do would suggest that parents, think about what you're reading to your children. What movies are you showing? What are you talking about? Systemic racism is in everything that America is built on. So how can we break down those walls and break down the barriers of these discussions that need to happen? So I want to try to leave on a high note, and because I know that we all are feeling the frustration and the anger, but how can we, I know right now, where you are right now in this conversation, it's good. It's a step, if anything, right? So what are ways that you think that we can address this problem in a positive, in a healthy way?
I'll go ahead and go, because I'm a nerd and I like fully wrote out like all my answers to your little questions because I wanted to not sound stupid when I spoke. But so it's ironic you bring that up, because the very first thing on my little list was what I teach my girls. I have 3 daughters. And one of the most important things to me is that they, A, recognize their privilege, and B, are taught to use their privilege to help other people, and to be kind, and to use their voice when they know it's right, not when they're told to or told not to. And I know in my house, this is not a new thing, a new discussion for my kids. This is not something that we haven't talked about before. And I'm thankful for that. And I feel like, oh, good job, parent, in that sense. But my oldest, Lily, when she was in kindergarten, her teacher is Black, and the best teacher she's ever had. Phenomenal. And she and her name is Miss Gray have such a beautiful bond. She still comes to every single one of Lily's birthday parties. Like, they're very, very close. She calls her whenever she has a great day at school, right? So they have a really special relationship. And the first time she learned about Martin Luther King Jr. Day at school, she came home and was just in tears, a total wreck. And I was, being my first child, I was kind of like, what's going on? And she was like, Mom, 50 years ago, Miss Gray couldn't have been my teacher. And that was like the most devastating thought in her mind, that this person that she was so close to, that was like her mentor, her hero in a lot of ways, wouldn't have been allowed to teach her 50 years ago. So for me, I think the first solution, like you said, is parenting. Like, when you start having that conversation, being intentional about that conversation, and for it not to be you only have it at Martin Luther King Jr. Day, or you only have it when they're during Black History Month, that you're like, it's a rolling conversation that you're just having with your kids constantly. And then also, like you said, Ashley, my second thing on my list was what I do in my classroom, and how I direct that narrative in my room, and what that looks like, and how we speak to each other. Conversations with who you choose to speak to, how you choose to speak to them. And then political involvement. It shouldn't be a political thing. So the worth of someone's life should not be political, but it is in this country right now. It's like a fully political thing, which is so disgusting to me. And so for me, I'm like, I'm going to these city hall meetings now. I'm getting involved because there's stuff going on that I was completely unaware of on a political front. So I think I'm afraid that people are going to get overwhelmed by the problem and therefore do nothing about it. What I'm hoping to do is get empowered and do something. So that's kind of where I'm at with solutions.
I think it's the same thing, right? So I think it's parenting, right? Getting involved where you can, and making sure the conversations don't stop, right? Making sure that the conversation and the movement and the momentum still has us looking at it even after it's not on our social media feeds anymore, right? And making sure that whatever environment you are in control of, you make sure that it has the right things that we need to keep this going, right? Whether that's your circle of friends, whether that's at work, whether it's, where your kids get to go hang out, making sure that it is a continual part of the conversation and a part of our lives as long as it needs to be.
I'm gonna jump in. I also think, similar to what I'm glad you made the point about it starts at home, because I was seeing a lot of articles float around, being an educator, that teachers can end racial, oppression, and they have the power to change it in school, and and is throwing it really on, just educators. And I thought about that as I was walking to the basketball court in my neighborhood, and as I'm walking, which I'll start driving from now on, but I was walking. And I turned to the left, and at one of these little like Dukes of Hazzards 1960s houses, like super old trucks in there, there was on the actual porch was a garden gnome that actually resembled Jim Crow holding a Confederate flag. And the interesting point about that, I took the video pictures like, okay, I'm gonna make a note of this. And what I thought about is, as I was going back, what was around the corner? An elementary school. So then I'm thinking, okay, I'm supposed to come in for 8 hours. I see a kid maybe an hour and a half, and somehow I'm going to erase everything that they get as soon as they go right back across that street, all the ideals. So it does really come down to being at home, and I'm glad you mentioned that. And people are starting to take ownership of that. More so than not, I think it also comes down to being super intentional and strategic about how we plan to address it, right? Because we can have conversations and in schools, we can try, all right, let's have this talk, more frequently, but it's think about how the structure that's in place now was, strategic. Like they planned how, okay, you're going to have this, we're going to erase this from history books. So we have to combat that with being strategic about if I have staff of, predominantly white teachers or whatever, or and then predominantly Black students, how am I educating them or helping them grow, the ones who want to grow, right? Helping them grow in their craft. What am I giving to them as a school administrator? Am I having this culturally responsive professional development one Wednesday out of 1 month, check compliance, okay, that's done? Or am I continuously feeding this? Am I doing equity walks, right? So am I continuously, the same way that I'm intentional, like I was taught and trained as an educator, and most people on here, about how, okay, this is how you move assessments. This is how the data looks. Their reading scores up, they're low, so you're going to use this strategy throughout the whole week. You're going to analyze it, exit tickets, Friday, check it again. Why can't I be intentional about how I'm ensuring that I'm having a diverse and inclusive community in my classroom or in my school? So the same intentionality that I put toward assessments, I want to put toward, am I ensuring that we're continuing these conversations, but also seeing it reflected in the way we talk to people, right? In the way they interact, and how we address behavior, like with some of my students. So it's about, sitting down, actually mapping out a plan, like your world map, I guess, for your school calendar of, okay, we're going to be super intentional about ensuring that we're not just saying we're diverse, we believe in diversity in an inclusive environment, but I can show you, like in each classroom, each month, how we're progressing, how we're doing, and not just doing it twice. Because I've seen this before. Pearson, I know you back me up. I've seen this before. We have 2 PDs, and then, all right, next one, testing coordination. Let's look at his testing scores. So, I think it's being strategic and intentional about it is definitely a solution that we can use going forward.
All right, thank you. Does anyone else have anything to add?
Yeah, just I love what everyone's saying, especially about the intentionality around school curriculum and how a Wednesday PD in November is not going to change systemic racism of a nation. Sorry, but like it's not. It's a Wednesday. So the thing that I sort of go to and think about with this school and this curriculum and education, because that seems to be the circle for sure that we're sitting in right now, is I think too often people think that all white teachers inside of predominantly Black student schools, that the white teacher's actually there to teach the Black kids and not serve and self-serve through their own guilt or problems. And so I think it honestly matters who we hire, and it's not just a face that looks good for the diversity, right? and really getting to who lies and who's in front of our kids, et cetera. I would say on my end, a solution that I'm sort of doing with these multiple circles is I think people lack connection because they're so homogeneous in their worlds. And so what I'm trying to do is center people of color and like bring in people of color and empower people of color and actually sort of bring in people who do actually have the voice of going through the trauma of, right, being Black. It's not that you can't just take it off and put it on and like it's a post and then it's not a post. Like centering people and voices on platform from social media to what I share, to what I do on podcasts, et cetera, that's going on recently. And to bring that up because a lot of people that I have connections with in multiple circles don't have a connection. And crazy enough, I was on a live similar to this where a former white supremacist jumps on the live. And I was like, here we go. And so he jumps on the live and he shares this story about how he went to prison. And in prison, there's multiple races, right? Definitely mixed races. And he said that in the cafeteria and in the eating area, it's one of the most sort of divided areas. But what's fascinating, though, is the sharing of food and the breaking of food. And I won't kind of get that level, but that's a place where healing and sort of commonalities can come together. And so this African-American gentleman in the prison comes and sits down across from him at the table and says, "Can I eat with you?" And it's literally that moment that he's got a decision that he either lives through his entire generational family tree or he says yes and listens. And he sat down and he listened and he said, "What was your experience that brought you to prison?" He said, "Well, that's my experience too, right? Here's our decision making and here's our life and where we are." And he says, at that moment, I realized in my head I could not emotionally, mentally, and physically allow myself to be a white supremacist from here on out because of the human that I met and the connection I had. And it literally like was a breaking of racism. And not to say that like a lunch with someone who looks differently will solve it all, but I think connection matters. And so in my circle and stuff, I have to center people of color as opposed to be some sort of like white savior list, right? There's a lot of opinions. There's a lot of like speaking. There's a lot of like, here's what I know when I don't know, right? I'm not afraid to go to the basketball court, Barry. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't have to make the decision to walk versus drive. And so why don't I center you speaking about it as opposed to like, hey, guess what, right? Here's a story. You know what I'm saying? There's much more we can do to center the people for human connection that I think would transform quite a bit of people if we can really bring them in and have them be the voices for what's happening. Because for too long, it's been white media and white voices. So those are sort of where I'm at on perspective or solution.
Thank you. Anybody else? Sam, Kierston, Kate? Okay.
No, actually, I'm sorry. I just was listening to everybody else. I think that in order to like make positive changes, you have to first educate yourself, and then being again like the whole intentionality thing. I think being able to correct people when they're wrong in a respectful way, and just being able to spread that, because you can't spread information if you're not informed yourself. So I mean, everybody pretty much covered everything. I think they were all great points, but I think it really starts with yourself.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Definitely. Go ahead.
Kierston said, so I was going to say the quote by Gandhi, be the change that you want to see in the world. So definitely, and to know thyself. So I think it's really important for us to do our own education and to learn just different perspectives. I enjoyed learning about what the white experience is. So then I know how to help you, like to help to change the world, to change everything. And then also to speak to, I have an 8-year-old daughter and she is my chocolate drop. And so I know I had a situation with her going to a predominantly white Christian school. But there they taught her that as a little girl, she could only have certain jobs. And I was heated. Like I said, "Oh no, ma'am, mommy is in a job where there are mainly boys. And you can do whatever you want to do. It doesn't matter the color of your skin. It doesn't matter if you're a girl or a boy. It does not matter." And I pulled her out of that school because I don't have time for that. And just listening to what everyone else is saying, that I do have a voice and I do have a platform. And this being here has really encouraged me to speak up. And I'm not involved in politics, really. I'm not involved in the social movement, but I need to be. I do have a voice. And so thank you just to everyone here, just encouraging me to not just stay quiet, because that's what I've done for so long, is just stay quiet because it's gonna stay the same. Like, that's pretty much my attitude. But that can't be for that little girl, for my little chocolate drop. I will. So
Thank you. And that is really encouraging to hear all of your ideas and where your hearts are, because I think that's where it is. It's where it starts, your heart and the love for people, the love for children, the love just to share love. That's all we can hope for. And so I really, really appreciate you guys all coming together to have this conversation. And I wish it could last longer, but we're gonna wrap it up, and I hope you guys have a great weekend. I hate to leave it like this, but I just really appreciate it.
Appreciate you for having us.
Bye, Ashley. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
bye. Thank you.
Ryan, real quick.
Yeah, very.
I love what you were talking about. Real quick, you're probably very familiar with this, but it's a author, researcher, motivational speaker called Daryl Davis. You familiar with Daryl Davis?
Say the name again, you cut out.
Daryl Davis. Daryl Davis.
Daryl Davis. I'm not teaching.
Yeah, and the reason why I mentioned him, because you were talking about bringing, people together and commonalities, and what he has, committed himself to in his life's work was actually traveling the world and meeting and sitting down with Ku Klux Klan members. And he converted like hundreds, I think at this point it's like thousands of members, like converted them out of that. And he has an amazing TED Talk. He was on Joe Rogan. I mean, that's just something, what you were talking about, like it reminded me of that. Cool. He's a black man traveling, but he's sitting down and having these conversations and really bridging the gap. He converted a lot of people, like a lot of white supremacist leaders and all that as well. So I was like, that'd be good, to add on to already what you're doing if you, want to look that up or.
For sure. Was he the same gentleman who attended the KKK rallies and did a TED Talk? Is that who I'm thinking about in my head?
Same one.
That's him.
Same
Got
one.
it. Okay. I know who you're talking about. Yep. Cool. That's awesome. Awesome resource. Thanks, man.
No problem. All right, yeah.
All right. Thank you, guys. Have a good weekend.